Thank you.
When Trump was elected, the Russian business and political community was clearly enthusiastic. We've heard about parties, champagne toasts, and when the inauguration itself rolled around, we know that several prominent Russians and Russian-American businessmen came to Washington for the festivities and the balls and such. We had gotten some tips on some of the Russians and Russian Americans who had been there, and once we established contact with some of them, we also asked who else was there. But there's also a lot of interesting material left behind on social media, pictures and posts that talk about how great it was to see this new presidency come in.
На входе к мемориалу Линкольна.
So the main characters in our story are the Repiks.
Где будет проводиться концерт?
Alexei Repik is a Russian businessman. He is the head of a very large and important pharmaceutical company. He's had dealings with the government and has met with Vladimir Putin in ways that are public record. Paulina Repik, who is the wife of Alexei Repik, is a former model. She has her own video blog, and she is actively posting while she's here in Washington, chronicling her visit for her followers back in Russia. Alexei and Paulina Repik ended up with some pretty good seats at the inauguration, not the kind of seats you or I would have gotten to if we just sort of wandered up in the crowd. Alexei Repik posted quite a bit on his Facebook page, and that included, for example, a picture of Vice President Mike Pence. There's a selfie of Mr. Repik looking into the camera with President Trump in the background speaking at a lectern. So here we have a Russian businessman who has at least some relationship with Vladimir Putin, getting awfully close to key members of the incoming administration, including the president himself. I've spoken to the Repiks about their visit, and they say they were here mainly to make the scene, to be part of a historic occasion, but also Alexei Repik clearly cares about the business relationships between the United States and Russia, and that was his priority, not the politics. In our reporting, we also came across a number of other Russian businessmen who came to the event. That includes Viktor Vekselberg, who is the head of a big Russian conglomerate and very close to the government, and also Boris Titov, who is another business leader in Russia, who is actually running for president there, but in an election in which he's an improved candidate from the government.
Ladies and gentlemen, the first couple, Donald and Melania Trump.
There were a number of receptions and balls affiliated with the inauguration, and one of them was held by Representative Dana Rohrabacher, and at that event, Natalia Veselnitskaya and Renat Akhmetshin were both there in attendance. These, of course, are two who met with Don Jr. and Jared Kushner and Paul Manafort at Trump Tower during the campaign, a pivotal moment in the investigation of Russian collusion.
The government has just released the declassified intelligence report blaming Russia for cyber attacks during the 2016 presidential race. This is
perhaps the most remarkable part of all this is there already was quite a bit of controversy about alleged contacts between Russian citizens and the Trump campaign and the Trump transition as well. So there was already a lot of political electricity around this, and yet it doesn't seem like it was that difficult for Russian businessmen to get into these events and even get very close to the president and some of his top people. People who have tracked previous events say it's unusual to have quite this many Russian businessmen in particular show up. And it was enough that we're told that the FBI took note of this kind of unusual concentration of Russians in one place so close to the new president. We don't know exactly who the FBI was keeping track of or what kind of investigation they were doing. All we know is that they had been alerted to the Russians who were converging, and they tried to keep track of it. We don't know what came of this. The hope that somehow things were going to get much better quickly between Russia and the United States, of course, has not come to pass. Several of the Russians who were at the inauguration have told us that they're frustrated that relationships have not gotten better as quickly as they had hoped. If there's a day of warmer relations coming between our countries, it clearly hasn't arrived yet.